So without further ado, I'm going to ask our first speaker, which is Helen Foster, to come up to the lectern and start her talk. Thank you, Helen.
Hello. This feels very different to Teams, so I'm very nervous. But on the plus side, at least I don't have my dog in the background to derail this presentation. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Helen Foster, and I'm the eTextbook Programme Manager from the Teaching Collections team. I'm going to be talking about a pilot scheme that we are currently undertaking that provides essential reading titles through demand-driven acquisition, or DDA. DDA is a method of ebook purchasing in which a purchase is only activated at the user's point of need. The pilot scheme provides essential reading titles that we could not source electronically elsewhere. Our eTextbook programme already provides one-to-one access to core eTextbooks through the Cortex platform, but most essential reading titles are provisioned through various ebook licenses on platforms such as ProQuest and AskUse. However, we are often unable to supply titles on these platforms due to publisher restrictions, prohibitively expensive licenses, or credit-based licenses that are quite expensive and difficult to manage. After discussions with a number of suppliers, we decided to work on a pilot with Cortex to provide demand-driven access to around 100 titles that we could not source elsewhere. Cortex did not have an existing DDA scheme in place, so we worked in partnership to create an innovative new scheme. We are the only institution in the UK to have such a scheme in place with Cortex. The programme provides students with their own personal copy of an eTextbook on their Cortex bookshelf. It's the online equivalent of having a print copy that they can highlight and annotate. The key difference with this scheme is that we only pay for the title when a student triggers a purchase, which is when a title is accessed for longer than 5 minutes or copied, printed or downloaded. The eTextbook links for the DDA scheme are integrated into reading lists online for the reading list that the titles are tagged on. Titles are also available through library search so that any student who needs access to the book can find them in the catalogue. We decided to have the books available through both of these routes so that we could enable as much access as possible. Benefits. The key benefit of this programme is that it enhances the student experience. It's entirely driven by the student. If the student needs access to the book, it's available for them at the point of need. We are also providing students with an increasingly consistent learning experience through having their most important reading materials available to them on their Cortex bookshelf, which you can see on this slide. A key factor in our decision to work with Cortex was the very detailed analytics dashboard. Using this data, we can see how much value for money we are getting because we can see how students are actually using the books once a purchase has been activated. We have been really pleased to see that the average activity rate for the DDA titles is 97%, which tells us that students really do need the books that we are providing through this scheme. This slide demonstrates the usage for business research methods, which has a very impressive activity rate of 99%. We can also see 100 hours of study time logged and over 15,000 pages accessed. Further benefits are that the scheme allows us to only pay for content that is required at the point of need, therefore providing cost savings for the library. It also gives us another option to provide access to essential reading material that is otherwise unavailable or only available through print or through expensive subscription packages. The programme does present a few risks. The eTextbooks on this model are individually priced and the prices can vary quite widely. Due to the unpredictable nature of the purchases, publishers do charge higher unit costs than on our eTextbook programme. However, this is mitigated by rejecting titles with very high unit costs. Costs are also unpredictable because any student could access the title. To mitigate this, we have a price cap on the scheme that we have agreed with Cortex and we cannot exceed. We also mitigate this by monitoring spend through a weekly expenditure report provided by Cortex. The model provides us with some potential future uses. It provides us with an alternative method of content delivery. For instance, we are often forced to purchase expensive subscription packages of books when we only need access to one title. Using the DDA scheme, we are able to only purchase the titles that we need at the point of need for the student. In the future, we may switch provision of some core eTextbooks with low usage to the DDA scheme. Ultimately, it provides us with a new way to ensure students can access key reading material and ensure cost-effective purchasing without detracting from the student experience.
Okay, So hello everyone, my name is Tom Higgins and I'm a software developer working in the digital development team. I'm going to tell you a bit about Manchester Digital Collections and some of the things that we've been working on over the last couple of years. So what is Manchester Digital Collections? It's a platform for exploring high quality images of cultural collections and research projects. It's also a website where we can share these collections with staff, students, researchers and the public. It contains thousands of items in over 30 collections, including books, manuscripts, newspapers, maps, letters, and photographs of objects from museums. So what does it look like then? When you view an item in MDC, you'll see that it brings together two popular standards. We use the IIIF standard to provide high quality zoomable images, and we also use the TEI XML metadata standard for metadata. So what is TEI? The Text Encoding Initiative is a standard for representing text in a digital form. It's based on XML and it's heavily used in digital humanities. So what does this mean for MDC? We can record basic metadata about items such as dates, places, people, and physical properties. We can have transcriptions and translations to enrich the item. And we can also have structural metadata such as links between items or pages. So that's a brief intro, but what did we actually do? What did the project look like? So I've put together a bit of a timeline. So these are the collections that we added to MDC over time, and each of the squares here represents a different collection. So we started in the project in 2019, and one of the first collections that we started with was the Peterloo collection, which was relatively large, about 300 items, but the items were quite simple. They were really newspapers, they only had a couple of images, a couple of pages per item, and I guess that lulled us into a false sense of security. So that went really well, and we had the soft launch actually the same month in October. But after the soft launch, we started to expand the collections and look at more complicated metadata. So you'll see here I've highlighted the Persian and Hebrew collections, and these had far more images. They were much bigger volumes, they were more interlinked. They used these things called Locus Tags. And what a locus is a link to a page or range of pages in a document. And suddenly, whenever you have links in metadata, you have to be really careful that the thing that you're linking to actually exists. So we started to run into a few problems with these, and we developed some tools to help us along the way to validate that all these links work properly, and that sped up the process quite a bit. So we worked on a few more collections. As you can see, there's actually 9 on this page. So we had the soft launch in October, but for the proper public launch in January, we had 9 collections. We've got them from the museum, from the Whitworth. We've got collections from researchers, such as the Mary Hamilton collection here. And that's actually an interesting one because that one, we already had some basic transcriptions with that collection, but they were very simple. It was really just text. They weren't interactive. The presentation wasn't quite up to scratch, but we had something to begin with, and all these collections were really a starting point. So we moved into 2020 after the public launch, and then immediately the timing meant that we were running straight into the first lockdown. So as the pandemic started up, we were faced with a bit of a choice. Do we ease off on this new platform that we've just launched, or do we really double down and try and put as much content in as possible? And that was ultimately what we decided to do. So throughout 2020, we averaged about 2 collections every month as we started to really add content to the system. I've just highlighted a couple here. So Bow in the Cloud was a collection which was the first one to cover a sensitive topic. So in this case, the abolition of slavery, and that needed to be handled carefully. The other one I'll highlight is Papyrus to Print, which was a collection to support teaching. And that was a really complicated collection with multiple parts. But as we went through the pandemic, it became really important to get teaching materials up on the web where they could be accessed if you couldn't go and physically view an object. And you'll also see that we roughly doubled the number of items as we moved through 2020. So in 2021, far fewer collections being added here. So we did a bit of tidying up in January and we added 4 more collections there. You'll see there's also a gap here. So MDC is a system that we've developed in collaboration with Cambridge, and one of the things they've been working on was a new schema for the system that supported some more elaborate parts of TEI. In this case, there's something called MS Part, which lets you have multiple documents inside other documents. And we knew we needed this for later collections. So we had a bit of a content pause while we went through and rejigged all of our metadata so that we could support this new standard. Another one I've highlighted here is Manchester Observer Collection, and the reason for this is we wanted to line it up with the anniversary of The Guardian. So sometimes collections have hard deadlines because of other events that are going on. And again, as we go through September here, you'll see we've yet again roughly doubled the number of items in the system. So finally, into 2022, even fewer new collections are being added, but what we're doing is going back and really fleshing out the collections that we do have. So you'll see the Persian and the Hebrew are back in again, and although we haven't added many new collections, we've yet again roughly doubled the number of items in the system. The other work that's ongoing is to really enrich the transcriptions that we have. So we're really adding a lot of interactive and linked data into these transcriptions. The Mary Hamilton transcriptions are now live, and we're currently working on the Simon paper transcriptions, which we need to automatically generate these transcriptions from Word documents that are being produced by the researchers. Okay, thank you very much.
Library Research Services Manager, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm delighted today to share with you a brand new library induction toolkit and also share our experiences of successful collaborative cross-library work to build this new resource. So anyone who's ever been involved in recruitment will know that the process of advertising, shortlisting, interviewing is extremely time-consuming, but fortunately the work doesn't stop once you've found your perfect candidate. There's still a substantial amount of work required to prepare for a new colleague joining your team, and there's no single guide or website to consult. In this lightning talk, I'm going to be launching the new Library Induction Toolkit and sharing 3 key messages with you. How the toolkit aims to guide managers through the induction process, how the toolkit aims to empower new colleagues, and how the toolkit aims to centre inclusivity to create a welcoming, supportive environment for new colleagues. So why did we begin this project? Following a flurry of recruitment in the Directorate of Research and Digital Horizons, the absolute plethora of scattered information related to inductions online was noted as a challenge. I worked with Nalani Ganeshwaran to develop an initial draft toolkit to bring important documents and processes together. Recognising the value in pooling expertise from across the library, we put a call out to the library's Staff Management Forum, SMF, for volunteers to help develop this into a central library induction toolkit. Colleagues from teams across the library stepped up and created a really positive, enthusiastic project team. It's been so lovely to work with all my colleagues that you can see on the screen here. We shared our local experiences of inductions, things that work well and some pitfalls to avoid, and collaborated successfully to create the new toolkit, which we're officially launching today. So the toolkit is available via SharePoint for all library colleagues to use. It's comprised of 2 documents, one for managers and one for new starters. Each document is broken down into sections. The Manager's Toolkit encourages consideration of induction period goals and expectations, the training required to help the colleague achieve those goals, and a plan for the colleague's first weeks and days in post. We hope that by working through the toolkit, completing each relevant section, managers will steadily build a comprehensive, supportive and welcoming induction for their new colleague. Click on. We were also keen to empower our new colleagues with confidence and a sense of ownership over their inductions. The New Starters Toolkit is intended to support development of their understanding of their role and our organisation, and to take the lead on tracking their progress. Inclusivity was a key priority for us when developing the toolkit, to ensure that the library is a warm, welcoming and supportive place for new colleagues. We consulted with the library's EDI group, seeking their expertise on these questions you can see on the screen and any other comments. If there's anything that anyone in the audience thinks we can do to improve the toolkit or the new colleagues induction period, please do get in touch with any member of the project team. Here are some examples of how we've developed a toolkit with inclusivity in mind, based on the EDI group's steer and also awareness of best practice across the library. Once we'd explained the official term probation period, we decided to use the slightly less scary phrase induction period throughout the documents. We provided information and guidance on getting support with accessibility issues and supportive tools. We provided information on relevant staff networks available and key EDI policies and systems such as report and support. We recommended requesting the new starters' pronouns early on to ensure respectful communication. One useful suggestion is to arrange your first meeting with your new colleague in a kind of neutral space. That's not where you're going to be working day to day, but it's very important to be mindful of the individual needs. We talked about how, for example, the Rylands Cafe could be a really nice option for a nice icebreaker and get to know the university, but that might not be suitable for neurodiverse colleagues who wouldn't want background noise. So always important to check with the new starter and their preferences. We also suggested setting up a buddy system for the new colleagues, so they've got a contact in their team other than their line manager. And finally, we put the toolkits through the Microsoft Accessibility Checker and refined the format on that basis. We're proud of the Induction toolkit that we've developed, but we know it's not perfect. It's going to be an iterative process to refine and review it. We're really keen to ensure that it's as effective as possible. So we'd like to invite you to download a copy of the toolkit next time that you're preparing to welcome a new colleague. Try it out and let us know how we can improve it for the future. Thank you so much for listening, and we're looking forward to hearing how the new Induction toolkit works for you.
To move on. There we go. It's a little technical hitch on my part there. Okay, so we're just going to do our first set of Q&A. So obviously Lucy isn't in the room with us today, unfortunately she's not able to join us in person. But we have questions for our first speaker. So what we're going to do is there are some roving mics around the room. I think, Sam, have you got one at the back there? What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you've got a question, and Michelle's got one over the other side there, is just to raise your hand, wait for the mic to come to you, and then I'd ask you to stand up and let us know who you are, and then ask your question. And our colleagues at the front will answer for you. Okay? So, over to you. Come on, don't be shy. Somebody must have a question. No? Phil, is that you? I can't quite see the sun shining in my eyes. Sam's on her way to you.
Hi Katie, for everyone to know, I'm Phil Reid, I'm in the Teaching and Learning and Students team. My question's for Tom, and you talked about MDC, but I was also wondering, you're saying about its development, but what does that mean for Luna, if that's not too loaded a question?
Hi there, Phil. Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's one that we considered really early on, because do you really want to be running two kind of image archive platforms? And what we really realised was that Luna does something quite different to MDC. MDC is more a curated collection of high quality images with metadata, and Luna is really for a broader system which can have images with perhaps not as much metadata. It won't have the TEI support in it. So although we initially thought MDC might be able to replace Luna, we've now come to a point where we think we need both of them kind of working together. Although it's something that does come up quite a bit about, do we put things in Luna or MDC or both, or how is that going to work? So it's a bit of an open question, but I think we'll keep both going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for kicking us off, Phil. Anybody else got a question they'd like to ask? It doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment as well. Okay, just wait for the microphone to come. Oh, we've got one over here from Kieran. I'll come back to you, Jeanette.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kieran, Head of Digital Services. Question for Helen. So, the core text provision, have we had much feedback from students on their experience using the textbooks? And then part two was the stuff you've done, other university libraries haven't done in terms of that thing. Is anyone else going to jump on and join the party?
Thank you, Kieran. They're two very good questions. So with regards to the first question, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of interaction ourselves within our team with the students. So the way that we can really get student feedback really is through the analytics dashboard. So through the slide that showed one of the books, that's how we can see that students are engaging with the books, and we can see what they're doing with the books. So we sort of rely on the activity rates of the books in the scheme to show how students are using the books. But over the next 12 months, we are going to be doing a few different projects to try and get a bit more student feedback. And with regards to the second question about other institutions, one thing that we do tend to find with working with Cortext is that they sort of use Manchester as a bit of a guinea pig with various schemes. So I'm sure that in the future they will roll out this scheme with other institutions. So watch this space.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Jeanette, did you have a comment you wanted to make? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Jeanette, I'm from the engagement team. I was really more just something for Lucy. I know she's not here in the room, but just to say thank you very much for pulling together the Induction Toolkit. As someone who's just going through the recruitment process and have been through it before, trying to pull all that information together takes up so much time, and I'm really looking forward to using it. So I just wanted to say thank you to the team that's done that.
Thanks, Jeanette. Yeah, and I think I'm sure a lot of us in the room share that sentiment, actually.
So timely.
Yeah, very timely, and it does look like a great piece of work. Sorry you can't be here with us, Lucy, but hopefully any questions for Lucy, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to receive them by email or via Teams after the event. Anybody else got a question they'd like to ask? There's one.
Oh, sorry, I've got burnt back. John Hodgson, Associate Director of Curatorial Practices, and a bit of an old lag. It's a comment really for Lucy, if she were here. Given that quite a lot of staff have joined the organisation during lockdown, I wonder whether there might be a role for the new induction toolkit in sort of doing retrospective inductions for staff who've joined us in the last couple of years. Obviously not a complete process, but whether managers, line managers could be encouraged to sort of pick, and staff themselves could be encouraged to sort of pick elements of the new toolkit if they're relevant.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. I think it would be worthwhile everyone looking through, wouldn't it, and just picking out any relevant sections. And the members, individual members of staff who are new to the organisation could take advantage of looking at the staff-focused document and ask and point out any areas that they're not sure about. So yeah, good point. I'm sure Lucy will have a look at that and talk to SMF about it. Any other questions? If not, then we will move on to the second part of our lightning talks, and I'd like to welcome Nick and Jeanette to the stage, and you can kick us off with your talk. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to start with some popular misconceptions regarding the engagement team. The first one is that we are subject librarians. Well, we're not. We're relationship managers. We're an inquiry service. No, we are problem shooters. We are problem solvers and troubleshooters. And that we just send emails. No, we shape comms plans and we develop tailored engagement strategies. We're also collaborators, working with other teams in the library to provide the best possible service for our university colleagues. And we want to take you today on a whistle-stop tour of what we as a team actually do. And we'll put a spotlight on how we shape our engagement activities to meet the complex needs of academics and PS staff. We'll also feature how we're able to distill often complex policy mandates to appeal to a varied and diverse collection of stakeholders. And in the process, we'll highlight how our knowledge of school and faculty comms channels allows us to share key engagement messages at the right time and in the right place. So fasten your seatbelts. Our academics face many challenges. The one thing we know is that they are time poor. They're faced with a huge array of competing and conflicting priorities. They face, in short, information overload. And we have to remain mindful that there are many things that we want to say about the library, yet it's not only the library that wants their attention. It's vital, therefore, that we have a coordinated approach to the communications that we want to highlight, because it isn't easy being an academic in 2022. Well, that's where we come in. Faculty engagement librarians represent the library at each school with their first point of contact, and we work in partnership, providing guidance on library services and support. And we liaise closely with academic staff and professional staff to map library services and support identifying opportunities where the library can add value to the school's teaching and research priorities. We regularly attend school committees, and we're not just advocates for the library, we are advocates for the schools themselves. Through this, we gain knowledge of how they operate. We gain knowledge of their concerns and priorities, and also we feedback needs and requirements to help shape future service developments.
So all of this provides us with a unique insight for how to communicate with our schools and supports our role in developing our communication and engagement strategies. If we want to get the attention of our university staff, then we need a tailored, targeted and timely plan. Our relationships that we're building helps add a multitude of additional channels to the standard university and library channels that we have. So each faculty engagement librarian has a responsibility for different areas of the library, and if a communication campaign is required, we'll work with the relevant service lead to help develop and establish what do we want to say, why do we want to say it, who do we want to tell, what do they need to do, and which university, library and school channels are the most appropriate to use. So there may be times when you think that we're not saying anything. You might not see that there's a news article on StaffNet, you might not see that there's anything on the library website, but that doesn't mean that we're not actually talking about what we're doing. Sometimes we're actually using to specific channels within our schools, which other members of staff may not see. So there's far too many communication campaigns to talk about in this session now, but we just wanted to highlight one of those, which was a recent one to convey the changes for the UKRI open access policy, which took place in April 2022. So this change represented a significant step in the ongoing open access movement, and it had some mandatory requirements and the potential to affect a large number of researchers. We worked alongside colleagues in research services, digital development and business analysis to develop a communications plan to not only inform about the changes, but all the necessary support that was available once those changes were implemented. So this involved a multi-pronged approach using a number of different approaches and channels, and providing a single point of truth webpage with explanatory videos, ready-made templates for academics to use, targeted communications to specific researchers who may be affected, and research leads who could then cascade down to the researchers in their areas. Specific news items for StaffNet, for the library website and for school-specific channels. And all of this was mapped out in advance in a very detailed plan according to the timescales of the change, and to make sure that it didn't overlap with other library communications. The project itself was an example of a very collaborative effort, drawing upon the insight and expertise from staff across various library teams. So in terms of how we know how we're doing, one of the things that we use is Microsoft Dynamics, which is a customer relationship management tool. It integrates with the marketing campaign software, and it helps us to capture all the interactions and feedback that we have with our academics and professional support staff. It allows us to monitor engagement within our schools and evaluate, inform and shape current and future campaigns. So that was just a very quick examples, but we just want to say, if you do want further information on what we do, and if you've got anything that you're currently working on or developing, something in the pipeline that you might need support with, then by all means do come and speak with us. And we're really interested to hear what you're doing, and we'll try and work out the best approach for you.
Oh, morning all. The likelihood of this working is pretty low, so let's see how we get on. I'm Pete Morris, I'm one of the digital developers. I'm going to talk about how we used some AI technology on our website. But the first thing I need to do, before we go any further, is everybody needs to say cheese, and we'll see how we get on from, let's go from there. See if this works. Come back to that later. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. So, this is a nice stock photo of our chorus resource at the university. We have a lot of these photos. Pictures of students looking happy, students sitting on grass, students looking up in the air, students being trendy in AGLC drinking coffee, researchers being trendy in AGLC drinking coffee. So we have all this kind of stuff. And what we generally want is these all over our websites, and we crop them down and we pop them everywhere, and people are happy. It's all good. We also had a request to do more AI work in the library. And the problem with a request that says do more AI work is that do more AI work with what? It's like use the internet more or use electricity more. It's a bit tricky. So we had to wait for the problem to come to us before we could actually do anything. And one of the things which we were playing around with various photo detection stuff is we suddenly thought, well, we crop all these the same way. We basically find photos of students drinking coffee or whatever, and find their faces, crop in on it, stick them on the website, then crop it a different way, stick it on the website, make it bigger, smaller. It's the same process for all of these. We always want one or more faces. We want them offset slightly, so we want people looking into the frame rather than looking out of the frame. We want it padded around them. The rules for making these are very, very consistent across all of them. So we had to play around with a little library called Face API. This is very fast, very accurate, and it picks out faces in photos very quickly. And it's probably important to say at this point, this is facial detection, not facial recognition. So we're not trying to work out who people are or do anything like that. This is just literally saying, is there 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? And it goes from there. The little blue and red boxes, sounds a bit difficult to see, but the red box is what it considers to be the main face in the photo. And definition of main is usually like how big it is or how strong the image is or stuff like that. The blue ones are all the other faces it's found. Then we start applying the rules on this. So the yellow shunted it down a little bit so it's not cropped too high. We've done a bit of gaze detection. So I wrote a little AI thing to work out which way people were looking based upon their eyes, nose and mouth. It's not 100%. It sort of works-ish. We'll see how we get on with that. We pad it out. You end up with the green box around it. And the green box is what we consider is the nice area that we might crop to in a tight photo. And then we change on that depending on how big we actually want the photo to be. Once we've done that, we can crop this in all kinds of different ways. We can have one face, we can have 2, 3, 4, as many as we want, tall, short, crop them all over however we want. It's not perfect. You'll see a couple where we've sort of, this one here, we've lost some, but we've got someone's nose sticking into the middle of this. So it's not perfect, but it's okay. This all looks a bit messy with lines everywhere. Take the lines out, looks quite nice at that point. That's quite good for a website. So, that's really what we were doing around this. And of course, because this is all automated, and we can repeat the process again and again, what we also found is we could do it in file formats as well. So our original photo here was about 3.5 meg. That takes about just 9 seconds-ish to download on a slowish mobile phone connection. If I crop that manually, I can get it down to 2.7. When we automate all of this, we can use formats that might not be supported on people's web browsers, but because we're automating it, we can just throw all of them at it and see which one sticks. So using one called Avif, which is probably the best one we use for these kind of things, I can get this down to 0.1 second load time, which is pretty cool. Makes our pages a lot more responsive and everything. And what I'd like to try and do now is a live demo on this. Like I said, the likelihood of this working is somewhat low, and the biggest problem is how to actually get the, I haven't got a mouse, I don't know, how do we get the Chrome on the screen is probably the, oh, is there a mouse beside? Oh, there we go, see. Epic. No? Oh yeah, there we go, we've got a mouse. I'm hoping if I sort of dragged it, yay, there we go, cool. Right, if I double click, if we're lucky, great, don't worry about the error message, it's supposed to say that. But now I can't see the refresh button. Let's try that. Is that F5? No, it's not. That's F5. Hey, okay, right, so there is our photo I've just taken of the room. It's done a few facial detection matches on various people like that, worked out a crop area on that, and I now have to be able to see the mouse. There it is. Okay, so that's what it comes out with if we're going to put this on a website direct. And if I am able to scroll up and down at all, there we go. So we can crop it in different ways, do balance crops, type crops, all of this kind of stuff around on there. These aren't being saved anywhere. If I finally find my mouse, am I in the right place? There we go. Take out all the lines so it looks a bit smarter. What we end up with, not a bad photo for a conference website, given that was all done automatically. And again, crops it all down. We get some nice things like that. Apologies to Sandra. You happen to be the main person in the photo there. But hopefully you can see it's a good start for doing this kind of stuff. And I will try and get back to the next slide, to the next person. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that was going to be a bit difficult to follow, but I'll try my best. So my name's Dave Hurst, and I'm going to talk about the Digital Society. The library and student teams partners in co-creation on a credit-bearing course. Now, I'll give you a bit of background first before I kind of talk about how the student teams support the course. So the library has been running Digital Society for, I think, over 10 years, so quite a long time. And we run it with UCIL, which if you've not heard of them, they are the University College of Interdisciplinary Learning. And they give students across the university opportunities to take subjects outside their kind of normal degree. So if you're in computer science, you can do a humanities one. If you're in humanities, you can do the Digital Society. So it's myself and Chris Milson that are the co-conveners, and we have about 5 or 6 different staff from TLS that actually are responsible for the creating the content and also engaging with the students across the course. Now, we've got Michael Stevenson, Ros Bell, got myself and Chris, and also Craig Morley that have put that content together. We use Medium, which if you will have seen it probably in My Learning Essentials, but we use Medium to host the content and also the support for the students. And more interestingly as well, we host the submissions on there. So all the student coursework goes into Medium and anybody can see it. So that's a big part of the course. Content themes we cover, let's think. So smart cities, being critical in a digital world, ethics, responsible attitudes in the digital world, and also the Internet of Things, if you've not heard of that, and the Internet. So loads of different kind of topic themes. How we engage the students? Well, we engage them with the topics which are really interesting and amazing, but also we get them to take part in reflective activities each week and take part in polls and ask them questions. It's about getting the students to think about their critical lens in relation to all these topics. Okay, so what can they write about? Well, they can write about pretty much anything as long as it kind of fits the assessment framework that we've set up. Now, I know you can't see these, but It can range from anything from an influencer. Now, I'm 51 years old, so I don't know any influencers. But this one at the bottom here is Grace Beverley, which you may have heard of, and they can also write about ethics or how smart cities work with us as individuals in the city. What really resonates for me as the co-convener is how the students develop across the assessment. So yes, at the start they might talk about how an influencer uses their social media profile, but by the end of the last submission it's totally different, and they're focusing on how technology can support disadvantaged communities, or how we can use digital tech in education. So it's a really interesting kind of critical development across the course. So on here, we've got Grace Beverley at the bottom, but we've also got how technology is used in smart cities and urban transportation. So loads of different options there. Student feedback, I'll just read out a few bits just to highlight, but brilliant feedback and constructive criticism. All features of Turnitin used thoroughly. Feedback like this ensures for future assessments we don't have to stumble thinking, what do I need to work on again? Clear, concise and confidence boosting. So that's obviously great feedback for us, but really good feedback for the systems we've put in place to ensure that the students get positive feeding forward, so they can get better as they go through the submissions, and they do as well. So by the end, the marks are going way up. I realise I just sped through that, which is good because this is the main focus of the lightning talk. So, how do the library student team support the Digital Society course? The first thing they do, and they've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years now, is to write, record and upload podcasts on a weekly basis that focus on the topic themes of that week. And so they take the student comments, the views on the polls and their reflections, they pull all that information together and they put it in as a podcast, or as well, the library student team add their reflections. Oops, sorry, I've gone over, haven't I? So they add their reflections. I'll be super quick now. And then we upload them onto the page. This is the ethics one. So this is a really interesting way to get the library student team engaged in the course, but also the students engaged as well. They're also a critical friend, so we can get them to think about the topic information, the assessment criteria to make sure it's all fit for purpose. And then finally, the most kind of exciting bit for me is that we're going to give the student team control over a topic week next year. So they will be responsible for all the content and engaging with the students. And I think they're looking at AI in bodies at the moment and technology in bodies, which will be really interesting. So I would just say here that a library that kind of supports a credit-bearing course like this is quite a rare thing in higher education. But having a student team that are providing support and engagement in content is even rarer still. So it's a really exciting development for the course. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you to all our speakers. So we're going to move into question and answers again. So same drill. I've got Sam and Michelle on standby with microphones. If you've got a question, raise your hand. They'll come to you with a mic. Wait for that. Stand up. Tell us who you are, and give us your question or make your comments. Okay. Who would like to go first? There's a question over here. Michelle? Scott? Oh, somebody else?
Thank you. Scott Taylor, Head of our Research Services. And my question is to Nick and Jeanette, and it kind of relates to Pete's strategic aim to use more internet. Can you share with us what impacts the shift to hybrid working has had on your day-to-day work, working within your schools and faculties?
You mean in terms of engaging with our academics and in professional support staff.
Yeah, I suppose, like, how has it been a positive shift? Has it allowed you to do things that you couldn't do before, etc.?
In some ways, yes. I mean, it's quite an interesting time at the moment because a lot of our engagement, obviously, has been via Zoom or Teams. Some of us have found that actually our academics are more willing to meet with us now that we can meet on Teams or Zoom. So before, when it was about, they have office hours and sometimes they've got students dropping in, so it was always quite difficult sometimes to say, well, come to your office. They'd be a bit cagey, but now it's kind of, I think I've had probably more one-to-one meetings recently through that. But obviously attendance at committees, so for example, some school boards and some schools weren't particularly well attended, but now that they've been on Zoom, they've been immensely well attended, so that's been quite good for us. And the shift at the moment is that some of those committees are now going to be coming back face to face, and in some ways I feel for us that being able to have that personal relationship, being in the same room with them is much more effective, I think. So it's an interesting time at the moment and things are shifting. I don't think that it's dramatically affected by the pandemic, but I think that we have missed that personal face-to-face being in the same room, and it's good that that's all coming back now. I have no idea if that answered that or not.
Yeah, I just add, Scott, that it's the hybrid model. Obviously, we're going back to face-to-face meetings now, but I find personally that academics behave a lot more on a Zoom committee meeting. They're much more willing to listen to others and to have a fair share of screen time. So there were benefits to it. I think that we did actually make some progress in terms of attending committee meetings online and school boards, etc. And I hope we can keep some of that going forward. And as Jeanette said, in my experience, people are much more willing to meet with you now because they can give you 15 minutes. They don't have to leave their office and they're speaking to you online.
Okay, thank you. Question from the front here.
Hi, I'm Des Coyle, I'm Acquisitions Manager. It's another one for Nick and Jeanette, really. It's just a comment. So in terms of the acquisitions team, communicate with academics on a daily basis. So in the past, we've worked with the engagement team on how to most effectively communicate with academics. And as you were talking, it struck a bell with me that it's time to revise that and maybe come up with some sort of template. So I'll just leave that with you. Get back in touch with me if you can. Okay.
We always love talking to you, Des.
I think I saw a question coming at the back there.
Hi, it's Rachel Kirkwood, Collections Manager. I've got a question for Pete Morris, please. With my EDI hat on, when you were talking about the AI facial detection, I think you know what I'm going to say here, that it looks for 2 eyes, a nose and a face, and my immediate thought was, what if someone only had 1 eye or had lost a nose or something? Would that be an issue? Is that something that, how would we think about that in terms of presenting and posting those kind of images anyway?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That short answer, I don't know. What I can say I do know about, though, is the Face API algorithm is very effective, sometimes too effective. So we had one example photo we used where it had some happy students drinking coffee, and it also happened to have on the table there was a magazine with a face of someone, and suddenly it cropped in on that because it thought it was the best. And I've not tested it on things like people with their face covered, people with sunglasses on, that kind of thing, which would be related to the facial features it can't detect on that. So I don't know the answer to your question, but I do know that the algorithm that we've anecdotally tested it around is usually too good, and we have to scale it back rather than not detecting enough. So, but it'd be interesting to try it. It'd be, as you say, it'd be interesting to find some photos which are non-standard. I know anecdotally it doesn't seem to have a problem with ethnicity. That's sometimes which often gets raised. Anecdotally, it seems to be fine with that. Doesn't seem to make any difference. But yeah, we could have a look at that and try some different examples and see what we get out of it. I think if we did have a photo which was giving it problems, we'd just crop it manually, as we always used to.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Michelle, there's a mic over here at the front for Lorraine, I think, and then there was another hand I saw.
Hi, I'm Lorraine from Library Exec. Just another question for the faculty team. What's the most frequently asked question that you get from academics?
I think that varies from which faculty or school you are in. Each of them have got different needs, I guess. I would say for, say, faculty of engineer, this FSC faculty, it's a lot of the frequently asked questions relate to open access and open research and making their journal articles. In humanities, a lot that will be resource driven, so it will be about whether we have specific texts or subscriptions in place. I'm talking on behalf of the whole team. Obviously, each faculty engagement librarian will know in their own specific area. But it's very varied. But I would probably say that resources and research will probably be the key drivers.
In FSC, I'd say that, yeah. In FSC, I'd say reassuringly, the main request continues to be subscriptions to new journals, and the onus on us then is to, as a team, is to create a business case for the content management group to put that to them. So it's quite an old school answer, but reassuringly, it's the truth.
Thank you. I did see another question. There was a hand coming up towards the front, but I'm not quite sure who it was. Hi.
Hello, I'm Tristan from Research Services, other Tristan, not engagement one. So I'm sorry, I've got another question for Nick and Jeanette. Really sorry, Pete and Dave. Yeah, I always wanted to ask you this, because we have this issue in our team. Do you have any top tips for? Oh, sorry, any top tips for getting academics to read to the end of emails? Because that's something that me and my colleagues often find quite challenging. Thank you.
I don't know if that actually requires an answer, because I think it's the thing that we all struggle with.
I notoriously went to a meeting once, and I won't say which school it was, and the academic told me that whenever he saw an email from a library, he just pressed delete. So what we've got to do is we've got to work in that sort of context, and you know, academics are quite, I won't use the word vain, but if you engage their interest from the very beginning, make it about them, what's in it for them, then they will read to the end of the email.
Thank you, top tip there. I've got a question for Dave, if no one else has got a question. And I just wanted to ask you about the student team themselves and how they feel about their involvement in the digital society and what advantages that's given them in terms of their experience whilst studying at the University of Manchester.
That's a really good question, actually. I thought I was going to escape answering any questions. But
sorry, Dave.
That's okay. They are, I mean, every year that they've been involved, they've been really kind of supportive and creative as well, you know, in approaching any kind of task that we've given them. But I would say they're genuinely excited about kind of taking part, not just to say, oh, this is what I've done, you know, I've as part of like my extracurricular stuff, but just as a, you know, as like an insight into how courses are run and how they can improve what we do in a way, I suppose. So the journal article that we're writing, the two students, Selma and Sarah, that are, the content they're creating, I mean, they're fantastically excited about doing that. So that will be for the course next year in 2023. So.
Fabulous. I imagine that's going to look great on their CVs for future employability and all that.
Yes, it definitely will. Thank you for the question.
I think we've got time for one last question and then we need to move to coffee. Anybody else got a question? Oh, I've got several hands all going up at once. I'm not quite sure who was first. Sam's got one. Can you stand for it? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Tony Richards from Imaging at the John Rylands. A question for Pete. Can you use those AI... There's the microphone. Right. Can you use those AI methods to recognise historic images of collection items compared to our rich digital resources that we have now? So if it's uncatalogued and historic, can we identify it by searching through our digitised collections?
Thank you. Very interesting question. I think there's a few things. It's going to be difficult for me to give a definitive answer on that. There's a few things that spring to mind. The first thing is that the facial detection is really only designed for photos and photographic images. I've not really done extensive testing, but it's not really designed for drawings of people, portrait paintings. It would probably work if it's a photorealistic one, I imagine, but if it's sort of stylized, it's probably not going to get great there. And the other thing which occurred to me, which now eluded me, as you were saying it, let's see if it comes back. I've lost it now, that's annoying. There was, maybe have a chat later if I can't remember it.
Thank you.
I was thinking textual based rather than faces and people.
Oh, textual recognition and stuff. Yeah, I mean that's a huge area of AI. That's something I'd like to look at next, basically. At the moment we've just done graphic based because it's one of the easier ones to work with. But yeah, absolutely, something we could look at textual wise. Yeah.
Thank you. It sounds like there's going to be a continuing conversation on that topic. I know there was another question from the floor, but perhaps if, John, it was you, wasn't it? If you could ask your question during coffee, that would be great. Hello, everyone. We are trying really hard to stick to time, so and we're doing pretty well, I think. So, just to kickstart, we're here for our final lightning talk session. We've got another 3 fantastic presentations to look forward to. I'm not going to steal anyone's time, so I'm going to hand straight over to Veronica, who's going to kick us off with the first talk, and we'll have Q&A after the 3rd and final lightning talk. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to see you all. I've never presented in front of so many people. I'm very nervous. I'm Veronica. I'm a metadata assistant, and I'm here to talk to you this afternoon about the collaboration between metadata and discovery and Manchester University Press. So, next slide, please. I'm loving to say this.
I've always wanted someone to say that to me.
So, in 2017, Beth here started creating records, catalogue records for specific Manchester University Press collections on an irregular basis. And in 2019, this initial collaboration became more regular with the work on legacy records. Bibliographic assistants and metadata assistants started working on records that we already had on the catalogue for Manchester University Press titles and enriching them with bespoke data that Manchester University Press asked us to add to the records. This initial phase moved to a second phase during the pandemic, in which we started creating new records for titles that were not yet published. So we worked on publisher-provided metadata, created the records, made them, suppressed them on the catalogue, and then made them available once they were available on the platforms for Manchester University Press. these platforms are Manchester Hive and Manchester Open Hive. So we work both with subscription content and open access content, and for authors that are based at the University of Manchester and elsewhere. Manchester University Press has always been very happy with the quality of our work, and while we were working on the creation of these records, the press was approached by international institutions for the purchase and the reuse of the records. Our collaboration grew further at the beginning of this year when we started exploring new ways to enrich the records, and with the input of colleagues from faculty engagement, we started experimenting with putting linked data in our records. Next slide, please. So what does it mean to introduce linked data in a record? It means to add unique identifiers to authors' fields and to personal names in subject headings, so people's names in subject headings. And where are these unique identifiers coming from? They're coming from interoperable websites like ORCID, in which researchers can create profiles, and they are coming from metadata website like VIAF for the subject headings. And so what has this collaboration taught us? Next slide, please. The collaboration, first of all, grew thanks to the willingness of people to work together and to collaborate, both within metadata and discovery and with the press. And it grew thanks to the quality of the works that we produced so far, the quality of metadata and the integrity of our metadata. And the collaboration led to experiments with metadata in ways that we wouldn't have thought before. The linked data is not yet discoverable on library search, but when it will be discoverable, it will be a further support to open research and open access, because our catalogue records will be access point for other websites and research profiles. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we have our next speaker, please?
Hi, my name is Laura Caradonna. I'm going to talk about the conservation of the Guru Granth Sahib JI. Can I ask please to put the video on? There is a video explaining a little bit more about the book. I think it was appropriate to have this explained by a Sikh person. It's from BBC Teach. So. As you may know, to have something like this on PowerPoint is a no-goer, so we had to do this.
Granth Sahib is the name of the Sikh Holy Scriptures. Its pages contain so much wisdom. We respect it just like a human guru or teacher.
When we're in the presence of Guru Granth Sahib JI, we behave in a respectful manner. So we make sure our head's covered, our shoes are off. We don't stomping, we don't make a lot of noise, we don't disrupt any other people that are listening to the different prayers.
The scriptures contain sacred hymns written by the 10 Gurus, as well as teachings from people of other faiths. There are 5,867 sacred hymns or shabads in the Guru Granth Sahib. They're written in Gurmukhi from the Punjabi language. The holy words of the shabads are called Gurbani, which means the teachings of the Gurus.
gurus, Sikhs, saints, people from the Muslim, people from the Hindu religion, they've all contributed to it. And there's passages in Guru Granth Sahib referring to for everyone to be pure in their own religion.
On special occasions, the entire Guru Granth Sahib is read aloud from start to finish. It takes around 2 days and 2 nights. We call this a Kanth Path.
So I'm going to correct you. It's Ik Oankar.
Okay, Ik Oankar.
No, Ik Oankar.
Ik Oankar.
Yeah.
You need to know the Punjabi language to translate the original text of the Guru Granth Sahib. My friend Harpreet is a bit of an expert.
Nirpal.
Nirpal. We're practicing the Mool Mantra. It means basic teaching and is at the start of every section of the Guru Granth Sahib. The Mool Mantra begins with the words Ik Oankar, meaning there is only one God. It reminds us God is the creator, without fear and without hate. He is immortal without form and can be reached through the mercy and grace of the true Guru.
It's basically the first prayer that Guru Nanak Dev Ji brought to us. It's amazing.
Precious copies of the Guru Granth Sahib are kept at the Gurdwara and treated with the greatest respect. After each prayer service, the Guru Granth Sahib is taken to a special resting room.
Guru Granth Sahib Ji are taken, carried on the head as a sign of respect. Another Sikh, they sprinkle water along the way. By doing so, they're cleansing the root.
We're not just putting a book into a bedroom. Guru Granth Sahib Ji contains all the 10 Gurus. It contains everything they've taught us, and for that, it's not just a book, it's a human being.
The rest of the congregation, they follow Guru Granth Sahib Ji into the resting room, which is called the Sachkhand, and Guru Granth Sahib Ji are put to rest there. The coverings are put over Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and the Sikhs then conduct a prayer, and then from there, the doors are closed for the day.
Guru Granth Sahib Ji teaches us many different things of how to be a good Sikh, how to live our life, how to be the best we can be.
Sorry about this. In accordance with the living Sikh tradition, the scripture is covered in 2 layers of clean cotton cloths to protect from heat and dust, and it rests on a cushion as shown in this image. This is replicated on the shelf where the manuscript rests in the storage area. The Guru Granth is always kept raised and is never put on the floor. Any person handling the Guru Granth should refrain from the use of tobacco, drugs and alcohol whilst handling the manuscript, and keep a low tone of voice to show respect and refrain from any abusive talk. The room where the Guru Granth Sahib Ji was conserved was a relatively small enclosed space, the Aldin room. This area was cleaned regularly as a sign of respect to the Guru. Before retrieving, I covered my hair, I took my shoes and socks off and washed my hands. A head cover, no shoes are required at all times. The manuscript was rested on a cushion and transported and kept covered whenever not conserved. Its conditions were not particularly good. Here you can see a little bit of an overview of the binding. So a part of the case was detached, as seen in the second picture. The end papers were very badly damaged. Also, all these leaflets that you see at the bottom, those are all repairs that I had to do. And the last part of the manuscript had a lot of very bad patches of repair that were added there. And they made the manuscript unreadable in the last part. Also, because of the composition of the ink, there were some damage on
and loss of text, as you can see in the last image there. In some of the operations, I had to ask for the help of one of my colleagues, Mark Furness, who has worked on the manuscript. I'm really thankful to Mark for this. As you can see, I have always my head covered, as well as Mark. You can see a little bit of the Alden room, the space where we worked. So there is some paper repairs going on at the bottom, and then you can see the case and the actual book block during the time that we were sort of rebuilding it together after a lot of paper repairs were done. And yeah, any time that I wasn't working on it, I was putting it to rest. I was using the Rumalla, this highly decorated cloth, to cover it. The conservation of Guru Granth simply wouldn't have happened without the help of Jasdeep Singh, a Sikh conservator that has guided my choices in the use of conservation materials and given me all the recommendations to make sure the manuscript was handled with the deepest respect during the treatment. Its conservation was crucial to the physical access of the manuscript, as shown in this image here, taken when the Guru Granth was awakened for the first time after the conservation treatment by members of the Sikh community of Manchester. For me personally, this was a very big highlight, and I will never forget it. It was amazing. Also, the conservation of the Guru Granth Sahib JI was crucial to allow safe digitization from being almost inaccessible due to the damage to the paper. Now, this incredibly important manuscript is fully accessible online. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name's Tristan. I'm one of the analysts in the research services team, and I'm going to talk as quickly as possible because I realise this is like the last talk of the day, so I'll try to keep it brief. So I'm going to talk about the like a mini project the research services, eThesis and research data teams I've worked on over the last 6 or so months. And I work on this presentation with my colleague Eleanor in the research data team. I'm mainly eThesis focused. Eleanor might be here. I'm not sure if she's here right now, but just to give her proper credit where it's due. So the project had essentially a key question, which was how can we improve at the University of Manchester PGR awareness of good practice in research data preservation and sharing, because one of the things I've thought about in my time in RS and as a former PGR is, is there potential to make collaborate more with the eThesis and research data teams, but also to do a better job of promoting the expert advice we already provide in the research data management team to people who are mainly coming towards us in RS for help with their electronic thesis submissions. So that was the question we were trying to ask, how can we improve that? And the kind of project ethos was we wanted to be achievable and realistic. We're not going to, in a mini project, be able to completely transform how PGRs do data in their schools or in their departments. So we wanted to be realistic and have achievable goals, but we also wanted to be ambitious. We wanted to see, can we do things that might be a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to move on to talk very quickly about some of those outputs. So first thing that was relatively simple, but it's surprising that we haven't done it before. So we enhanced the training materials. So basically this is a presentation that the faculties ask us to do to explain the electronic thesis submission process and things about the open access of their PhDs. We basically added a whole section on sharing research data, storage, good practice, links and signposting to the research data team and the research data management website within our eThesis training workshop. So that is now going out to hundreds of PGRs in their third year who we deliver the eThesis training to. So that is exposing them to more kind of guidance and information about research data sharing. So that was one thing that we did that was relatively easy to do, and I think I did possibly in a morning, not to brag, but it didn't take too long. The website took a bit longer, so amazingly we didn't have a section about data sharing on the eThesis part of the website, so we worked as a group, but with a PGR and FBMH called Marta, on writing a new web page for the eThesis section of the website, all about best practice in research data. And again, it's doing a similar thing to what the eThesis training slides were doing, providing additional information, but also, but importantly, signposting and linking to the RDM website, where all our research data librarians can help them. So again, it's pushing them towards where the expert advice in the library is. One of our more ambitious goals, which I think we should all be proud of, is actually getting the university's presentation of thesis policy updated with a new, improved section about research data submission. So this is something we had to work with the research and business engagement team, so a team outside of the library, because they're the owners of this policy. And we added a new section. We replaced a really embarrassing, slightly cringy old section which talked about submitting data on CDs, and it was all very 1990s and a bit embarrassing. So we updated that with a whole new section, and as you can see, the link just at the bottom on section 3.1, we also completely rewrote, and I mainly want to credit my colleague Eleanor, but we all contributed, but mainly Eleanor. We completely rewrote this 5-page, is it 5 pages? 4 pages document on eThesis submission and research data. So that's again just adding even more kind of detail to the students when they're doing their eThesis submissions, and providing more information about best practice in research data sharing. And the the presentation of thesis policy is a document that all PGRs should be reading, and their supervisors, before they do their submission. So again, it's just another element that we did in the project to further help raise awareness of good research data sharing for PGRs. Yeah, and finally, this is just a slide just emphasising how it was how much of a kind of cross-library, but also a cross-university project it was, with Martin at FBMH and the graduate education team, Helen Baker and Alex Hinchcliffe's team. So we needed to work all together to get all those things over the line. So hopefully it's making a big difference. Thank you.
So it's me again. Going to just have some question and answers now for our 3 speakers. I think I've got a roving mic here for the speakers to use. And I'm looking for my roving mics in the audience. I've got one here from Deborah, and there should be another one. Sam, there you are. So have we got our first question?
Hello, I had a question for Laura. Stand up. Hello everyone. I had a question for Laura about the Seek manuscript. So, immediate thing that comes to mind after Esme's really enlightening talk is how did we end up with it? I'm sure there's a story there. And also, are there any considerations around repatriation? Of course, it complicates things when the local Seek community is so invested in using it and it's accessible to them. So, I wonder if you had anything to say about it.
I don't know if I can answer that properly. It's a very difficult question to answer. I think to make it available to the community is the most important part. We are in conversation, as much as I understand, to make this accessibility as much as possible. About the provenance, I think it's a bit iffy and it's not really mine, I haven't got a lot of knowledge of it, and tried to get out of that zone just because I was trying to be, you know, as much focused as possible on the object and, you know, to be respectful of that. But yeah, I think for me the greatest achievement is the accessibility of it and the fact that now it can be actually accessed and, you know, used for religious practice as much as possible, while before it wasn't possible. So for me, that's the greatest achievement. That's the best answer I can give you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We've got another question here. Can you wait for the microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add that I may have read the wrong catalogue. I do that sometimes, but I'm pretty sure that the catalogue says that it was wrested from the hands of a Sikh priest. And I think given by the date that it was acquired, it was probably after the Second Anglo-Sikh War, when the British defeated a lot of Sikh and Punjabi armies that were kind of trying to defend their independence against them. I think a lot of items were acquired at that time. That wrested from the hands of a Sikh priest relates to one of the items relating to Sikh heritage that we hold. I think it might be the Guru Granth Sahib, but I'm not sure, but it relates to one of them.
I think there is a reference to the fact that it was bought by a bookseller, from a bookseller, sorry. So that's as much as I know. And I know that one of them definitely is what you just said. It may not be the Guru Granth Sahib JI though.
It would be nice to get some clarification on that, wouldn't it?
Yes,
Back
definitely.
after the event, I think we're all interested now. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for our speakers? You all want your coffee, don't you? Yeah, well, we are pretty much bang on time for coffee, unless there's did I see a hand just going up then? No? Oh yes, there's one there at the back, John.
John Hodgson, just to clarify, we do have quite a lot of information about the provenance of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib JI. So it was indeed wrested from the arms of a Sikh warrior at the Battle of Gujarat in the 1860s. It later passed to the London bookseller Bernard Quaritch. It was acquired by the Earl of Crawford and Enriqueta Ryland's purchase of Crawford Collection. So there is clearly a conversation to be had about repatriation. We are having ongoing discussions with members of the Manchester Sikh community, and certainly the conversations I've had are that they are very happy for it to remain in Manchester. That's not the final answer though, but the key thing, which Laura has very eloquently described to us, is we are making it accessible through digitisation and conservation. I remember 20 years ago, we actually denied owning the thing because we were so uptight about it, which clearly is the wrong policy. So we're now being much more open about the provenance of the item, and we're having that dialogue. And I know Maya and Inbal hopefully will be taking that forward in a joint project between the Race Centre and Curatorial Practices.
Thank you, John, that was really helpful. Okay, if there are no more questions, just do a final scan to see. We will go to our break. So can I just remind you, this will be probably your last opportunity just to have a look at the digital content and the posters that are available to view at the back of the room. So please take the opportunity to do that. And I will need you all back here by 3:15 when you can hear from Len Cisse, and we will then move into our award ceremony for the inaugural the Rylands Awards. Okay? Thank you.